Do 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 do.
It's me. Hello, I'm the problem. It's me, and welcome back to another episode of SimplyPodLogical, a Simply Nailogical podcast.
Hello, everyone. Hope you had a wonderful, happy Halloween. But it's November now. It's Christmas time.
Time to hear some Mariah Carey. I'd rather listen to Taylor Swift.
Okay. Yes.
All right, Christine, today we're going to talk about Taylor Swift and some other stuff. But first, do you want to tease? You want to hint that the holidays are here?
Speaking of Christmas with no H, we have some
Of course.
holo glitter faves. If you recall from last year's Holo Taco Christmas collection, they are returning.
Making a comeback.
They're making a comeback tomorrow.
Every day is a holiday.
Tomorrow, yes. So
tomorrow
they'll be
more than most.
There'll be a restock of seasonal shades from last year tomorrow, along with some other holo glitters that just hadn't been in stock for some time.
All right.
Almost all of them, not all of them, but most of them. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yay.
Okay, that's it. Taylor Swift.
Yes. You
Cristine,
love her.
Midnight's. Okay, it's been what? It's been a week, 2 weeks since the new Taylor Swift album came out.
I think you need to start by explaining to what extent you are a fan.
Okay.
Because some people do find it surprising, I think, to learn that you are a genuine fan of Taylor Swift.
Oh,
Yeah.
Do you think people think it's just a joke?
I'm not sure. Like, I have seen occasionally people be like, what? You listen to Taylor Swift? I do not believe it. Or they think you're just trolling. So I think you should just kind of start there.
Yeah, I like
okay.
Taylor Swift.
Yeah. And how long have you been listening to Taylor Swift?
I won't lie. I wasn't a huge fan of a lot of her, the last two albums she did before this of new music, not her re-recording her old music, I found very interesting, which is Folklore and Evermore, when she basically was like folkier music with like Bon Iver and the National, and it definitely had a different production style. I think
love that
reflected
one,
some
yeah.
maturity as an artist.
Okay.
Before that, I thought of Taylor Swift as like the pop ballad anthem person.
But were you a fan then?
And you know what? I can appreciate like a pop masterpiece. So when I hear a song like Blank Space, I could appreciate a song like that because I think it's just like a perfect pop song. But I wasn't sitting around listening to Taylor Swift albums.
So you
if know
became
what I mean.
more of a fan who would listen to every song when she came out with Evermore or Folk. what's it called? Evermore.
Yeah. I think that's a good way of putting
Okay.
it. And I also thought it was just interesting, the sort of story of her re-releasing her old music because she didn't own her masters, and that sort of narrative around her ownership of her music is also very interesting to me.
I also liked the song with Bon Iver, but that's because I really like
Bon Iver.
Bon Iver.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Okay. You always say that's so French, eh? He's just
Yeah.
some guy from Wisconsin. Like,
But like, was that not intentional to be like Good Winter?
yeah.
I know it's
yeah,
Hiver
no,
without
it is
the H.
French. It is French.
Well, no,
yeah.
there need to be an H in Hiver, but it's
Oh, yeah.
to me when I look at those words, I in my head I hear it like the French way to say Good Winter.
Anyway, Taylor Swift has a new album.
Yes.
And that's a big deal for people. I mean, anyone paying attention to pop culture is probably hearing about this to some degree.
Yep, it's everywhere.
It took me a few listens it's been growing on me since listening to it. Because I think what I wanted and what I think it kind of does is a bit of a balance between the sort of more mature songwriting of her last two records, but also a bit of a return to like more of a pop influence or song structure. And like nothing on this album sort of reaches those heights of like being a pop ballad necessarily. Like some people
more like
maybe
low-key?
want. It's more kind of like low key, lo-fi, a little moodier than she used to be. But I've listened to the album maybe like 3 times now, the whole way through.
Okay,
And each time I like it more than the time before.
that's good to hear.
Yeah. So my top 3 tracks are Maroon,
Okay.
Labyrinth, and Bigger Than the Whole Sky.
Okay.
Okay. You've heard a bit of it.
So
Do you
I
have
need
any
to
thoughts? How much of
explain-
a Taylor Swift fan are you, Christine?
So Ben is a bigger fan than me. I'll put it
I'm a fake fan.
that way. I find myself mostly listening to what people understand more is indie music, where the artists generally aren't that large. And I also like less pop music, unless I'm wanting to listen to like trance music if I'm working out, like
Yeah.
EDM, but that's like totally different. That's not what I listen to
Sure.
when I'm just, working on my computer doing stuff. So I'm more interested in like low key artists kind of thing, and not necessarily big pop songs.
If Taylor Swift was less famous, would you like her? Or do you think she makes the kind of music that makes her more famous and that's what you don't like?
I don't know, and I absolutely do not want to criticize her voice or her songs or what she writes about, because like obviously a lot of people really love her. I just have different taste in
You don't
music.
have to like it. That's fine.
Yeah.
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 If so, she's going to go on tour soon. That's basically been announced. It's just not for sale yet. Will you go see Taylor Swift on tour with me?
With you, yes, I will go. Just like I
Okay,
went to a
just for
hockey
me?
game with you, even though
You
I
think
do
those
not.
things are comparable?
Well, yeah, it's like I don't really enjoy it, but I'll go because you like it.
Hockey game, Taylor Swift.
Yeah,
Hockey game, Taylor Swift.
It's like a concert, same thing.
What's the biggest concert you've ever been to?
I don't know, like Backstreet Boys when I was 12.
It's a good answer because that was probably like an arena in Toronto.
It was outside.
It's outside.
Yeah, it was an
Okay.
outdoor concert. I can't remember. It must have been downtown Toronto. Yeah.
I wonder, for me, I think I saw the Black Keys in Montreal at the height of their popularity. That filled up an arena. That was a good show. I've also seen Bon Iver live. That's probably the best. That was outdoors.
Didn't
At a
we
folk
see
festival.
Metric? We saw Metric.
We saw Metric at Blues Fest
But
years
that was
ago.
smaller than
That was a
when
bit of
I
a
went.
smaller show.
Yeah, that was smaller. And
Metric's
Metric,
cool.
They also played at Carleton, our university, when I was in first year.
It's like Frosh
Week. Yeah, they played at. I was like, what?
I don't
How'd they
remember
get them?
that.
Anyways,
Is that our year?
yeah, I went. I don't know if it was first or second year. I can't remember, but
Okay. Anyway, I don't know how we got on this. So, new Taylor Swift album. I like it.
you love it.
You should listen to it. Do we want to address the elephant in the room? That's not a fat joke. But there's the first
Don't call Menchie an elephant.
Menchie.
The Menchie in the room.
She released a music video for the lead single off that album, Antihero. And it's been criticized, and they've even gone back and edited the video because of something that happened in it,
Okay.
which is her depicting. There's a scene in this music video where she gets on a scale, and it just says fat.
Which song is this?
So the song's called Antihero. The song.
What's the song about?
The
Yeah.
meaning of the song, I think the reasonable interpretation of the song is she's sort of representing how she has like internalized a lot of the criticism she gets in the media. And it's almost sort of like a sarcastic commentary on her accepting the truth of those criticisms. So it's like, hi, it's me. I'm the problem. It's me. It's like, yeah, I'm to blame for all of this. All the bullshit you read about me and my relationships in tabloids. Yeah, I'm the problem. It's sort of like a sarcastic acceptance of that.
So it's like trying to take it back, like trying to say, go ahead, say what you will. Like, I'll just be like, sure, yeah, that's me. Like, is that the vibe?
I think that's an element of it, but it's also kind of like the way you can be your own worst enemy by internalizing those things
So it's
and
like a
just being self-destructive in general.
So like a self-fulfilling prophecy at the same time.
Yeah, so there's nothing explicitly in the song about her struggling with her body image or
The song's not about
the song
that.
isn't
Okay.
really about that. Although there's another song on the album that more explicitly, I feel like we should put a trigger warning on this conversation in general because we're talking about like fat-phobia and body image issues and her or women in general being subjected to certain societal standards.
Yeah, and let me just say, because I don't really consume a lot of Taylor Swift content, I became very aware of this issue because you can't be on Twitter without seeing that this has been an issue and a lot of people have been talking about it. So I will just say up front, if this is something that you've already kind of decided that really upsets you and you don't want to hear other people speak about it, like that's totally fair and totally valid, that's you want to just back out, that's okay. I think we wanted to have this conversation in part because you as a Taylor Swift fan have wanted to unpack this and talk about it, and I do think there is a way that people can still speak about it in a respectful way and to come at it with compassion and understanding why people have been hurt. So I've done a lot of reading on Twitter and elsewhere to kind of understand And also some people who'd left a couple comments on my last stream because you like mentioned it for
It,
2 seconds.
Came up in passing.
So
yeah.
I've done a lot of reading for what I can to kind of understand the harm that people have seen from this incident. So I'm not coming at this totally uninformed. The one thing I am uninformed on is like I don't watch that much Taylor. So it's hard for me to say, is this a trend in her music? Is this something she's communicated in the past? That's where I'll defer to you.
Yeah, and I'm not a super fan, but she has talked about the fact that she has struggled with an eating disorder, basically, and that she just like wouldn't eat to fulfill a certain or to try to achieve a certain. She basically talked about having body dysmorphia in a documentary that had come out a while back, and there's a song on this album where she like refers to starving herself to achieve a certain look.
And that's really fucking sad.
Yeah.
But also not that surprising, unfortunately, to hear that someone who's that famous and popular has dealt with, sadly.
Yeah. Well, and fame or not, right? A lot of people deal with this. Yes.
I didn't mean it that way. I didn't mean
Yeah,
that
yeah.
not
I know
famous will
what
not
you're
experience
saying.
this. But when you are subjected to millions of people eyeballing you and giving them an opportunity because they are fans and are allowed to evaluate you, to say whatever they want about you, that can absolutely exacerbate you feeling that way.
I think at least an element of the criticism, though, has referred back to the fact, well, like, she's rich and famous and basically looks like a supermodel. And people almost like bring that up to like dismiss that like this could be coming from like an honest or legitimate place. And I find that like really reprehensible and gross because it kind of implies like if you have money, you can't deal with these issues, or if you're famous, or if I've decided you're a certain level of beauty that you couldn't possibly be struggling with these issues. I think at least some of the criticism just comes from that sort of more gross perspective. But I think we want to.
But I've also heard that people have said that's not what they have an issue with. Yep. They don't have an issue with that she has communicated in the past or in that video that she struggles with her body image. And that's fair and valid. But their issue was with the choice use of that word and using the word fat to imply negative and something you don't want. And also that, sorry, I just lost my train of thought. So like that was an issue they had, but they also felt like it was kind of not that well unpacked way to bring up the fact that she has issues dealing with being in the public eye and, you know, people commenting on her body. That there would have been a better choice of words or way to express that didn't reduce it to just using the word fat on a scale, and that's that. Because their argument is in part that only causes more harm by perpetuating the use of that word as a negative insult. Basically.
Yeah. But okay, here is my interpretation of that scene in the video. And I could agree with you that it's not a very nuanced or creative sort of representation of this issue, right? It's stepping on a scale, it's saying fat, and like her just like kind of shrugging her shoulders. It's kind of like a throwaway scene.
It sounds kind of like I don't like lazy is not the right word, but just like not the best way to communicate the depths of the struggle.
And what's interesting is the video already sort of implies, it otherwise implies that like she kind of feels like a monster and different from people. It refers to herself as being too big, which could be interpreted either as being too big of a celebrity to relate to people or just big in other way. Like there is actually a more sort of like subtle nuanced interpretation of like other aspects of the song and music video that could even be interpreted in her sort of struggle with a body image type way. But anyway, like just leaving that aside, let's say you have a problem with this scene and her just using the word fat, right?
Yeah.
I think the reasonable interpretation of that scene is her representing that she has internalized this sort of societal pressure or media criticism of, you know, anytime she fluctuates a bit in weight, people are speculating that she's either getting fat or pregnant or something, right?
Yeah, and I don't deny that's probably
so
happening.
I think, you know, you have to really be not giving a charitable interpretation of the video at all to sort of ignore that it is coming from a place not of like reinforcing the idea that fat is bad. It's coming from a place of it's a representation through her art of her having been subjected to this and internalizing
of her being labeled that and wanting to communicate that.
Because there's this criticism I've seen from people of just sort of reducing this moment in this music video to like, oh, Taylor's worst fear is being a fat person like me. First of all, it's like not about you, and it doesn't have to be about you, right? So an artist is writing from their own personal perspective, and you can choose to interpret however you want. But I think it's just totally wrong or misguided to even interpret it in the way of reinforcing the idea that fatness is bad, as much as it is her expressing how she has faced that in her life as being, that idea has been sort of impressed upon her, or she has been subjected to it.
Yeah, I hear you. And I don't deny that I totally believe that she has been subjected to shit like that, for sure. And that's absolutely not helped. I still feel like her using that word in not much context in the song about struggling with those issues still kind of doesn't help, because if she's been subjected to that word and, she's allowed to feel that way, and she is valid in feeling like that people have hurt her using that word or other words, whatever. And like, that's not the issue. But her choice of how she presented it, I don't think helps people. And maybe your argument back would be like, well, it's not her responsibility to care about the feelings or trying to make the world a better place where we don't do that. And I will agree on that point, that I don't think it's the responsibility of every influencer or creator to make sure 100% of what they say is going to make the world a better place, because that's like an unrealistic expectation. We can't all live up to it. Even me, I can't live up to trying to always only say things that are going to make the world a better place, as much as you try. But at the same time, I still feel like Taylor must recognize that doing something like that and using just that choice of word in that not nuanced context probably would hurt people's feelings, and could have been done in a way where she would still be allowed and able to express the struggles she's experienced, but communicate them in a more empathetic and compassionate way. I think that's kind of the position that I've taken, kind of similar to how there's such a thing as like, constructive criticism, like being nice in a way to let someone know about something or communicate something rather, and then just like saying it like you're an asshole. Like there are ways in real life that we choose our words carefully, and we choose how to communicate something to get the point across in the most respectful way. And I feel like what she did wasn't that. Now, I don't think we should tell her how to define herself or how other people have defined herself either. I feel like that's really unfair. Who's to like tell her that people haven't called her that and she's dealing with that? I don't think that's fair either. I don't want to police what she says at all. But just like as a human, if it were me, if I were Taylor Swift, I probably would have written the song or changed the words or changed the word choice a little bit more nuanced. That's all. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's fair. And I think at the end of the day, for me, this comes down to the difference between like, is there valid criticism in what she is representing or portraying here? Or is what we're seeing a lot of just policing from people trying to tell this person how they are or aren't allowed to express their own, experience with something, right? And that's what's bothered me the most about some of the criticism. I believe some people are coming from a genuine place of just being like, it wasn't clear enough what she was trying to say. It wasn't fleshed out. It wasn't nuanced enough. It was just fat on a scale equals bad. And some people might interpret it that way, and that is damaging. And I don't
feels like a setback. Like, I feel like that's something you would have seen in a scene of a movie 20 years ago.
But I think anyone who thinks about it for more than... I do not see how you interpret this as something other than her sort of condemning fat phobia. So in that sense,
but it's reiterating that word is negative, which many people don't like or agree with.
I think she is showing why it is bad that she feels this way, and I think people are very like projecting sort of their own baggage onto this in trying to make it seem like she's just reinforcing the idea that fat is bad. I don't think that's a good faith interpretation of the video at all.
So while you might be right that some people are coming from that place, I still think that there's people who would come at it from a more like what is in the best interest of our society place, and it's not necessarily coming from a place of insecurity. Like me, I don't really care about Taylor. Okay, I don't want to say I don't care. But like
Sure.
it doesn't bother me that much. I'm also not what society calls fat. So I am not the audience who you would argue is being made more insecure from this. But I still feel like how she presented it in that context was like not really the best and probably doesn't help. And I feel like every woman, society defined as fat or not, has at some point in their life felt like they looked bad or, had a couple rolls or whatever on their body and felt uncomfortable in their skin and might have in their head called themselves fat. And a lot of people have dealt with that. And whether or not you are what society decides is fat, I feel like people can still be empathetic to that position, that word can be really hurtful. And even I see that, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, and I want to come at this from a place of empathy too. I don't think this really should matter, but like I was very fat. I still think of myself as a fat person now.
Actually, that is a good point. Sorry, just to introduce that a little bit better. A lot of people, I'm just trying to lay out what you're going to say. A lot of people I've seen say that people who are not what society deems fat are not allowed to comment on whether or not Taylor's actions were acceptable or not because they do not understand.
Yeah, and I just really, I disagree with that. I think having been like objectively overweight or whatever society defines as overweight gives you a different perspective into this issue and that you have like some more meaningful lived experience. But there isn't just some like binary here of like fat is allowed to have an opinion on this topic. And to me, like the gross aspect of that is it almost sort of implies that someone who looks like Taylor Swift can't express that they have like body dysmorphia or something because they're objectively beautiful. Like that to me, I think is really gross. I guess what I was going to say is, as someone who, I kind of even resent that I have to say this, honestly. Like, yeah, I was very overweight. I don't need people on the internet telling me that I'm not fat enough to have an opinion on this. I was very overweight for a long time, and I hated myself about it, So, like, I'm not lacking in empathy for this issue and how damaging fat. I don't even like the word fat phobia, to be honest. It's not like a fear of fat people.
But if you kind of go back to that time, if you saw one of your favorite artists kind of do what Taylor did, would that hurt?
I would no, because I think what they are doing is condemning that societal standard. And I feel like I'm taking crazy pills seeing the reaction to this video, as if people are thinking what she is doing is a bad thing when I think it's condemning the same thing they're condemning. Because like, unless you, here's my best attempt to interpret this in a way where that actually makes sense to me is it's one of two things. Either you think it's just like disingenuous, Taylor Swift is a big marketing machine, and this was just hey, let's throw this into a video to like relate to kids.
I don't believe
like if
that.
you think this is just coming from a completely
that, no.
dishonest place,
Yeah.
and it's just like a marketing tactic, then I get why you feel it's gross. But otherwise, I think the only way of interpreting it badly is that even sort of reflecting on this idea at all, or even like maybe it's a clumsy commentary on how society reinforces the idea of fat being bad, which I think is what she was doing. Maybe you just say that because someone might misunderstand that, or someone that might, your argument, I guess, is that that's reinforcing that idea, even if it's supposed to be a criticism of it. Maybe you just see it as bad for that reason alone, which basically tells me you just don't want to see any sort of,
they don't want to
you
see
don't want an
that,
artist at all sort of expressing this. So, but like, is that just silencing?
I don't think so. I don't think that's what people are saying. And I just want to give a parallel example because there's another artist, Tuvlo, who released her new album just around the same time that Taylor Swift did. I'm a fan of Tuvlo. I really like her stuff. And so I've listened to her entire album. And it just so happens that there's a song on there called Grapefruit that is basically about, I think, body dysmorphia, where she's talking about like how what she sees in the mirror is not her. There's a line about counting calories, and there's a line about how she wants her obsession to die. And that to me is a much better example, I think, in my personal opinion, but maybe I'm biased because I'm just a Tove fan. I thought it was a much more artistic and thoughtful description of how someone like Tove, who is beautiful and thin by society's standards, can communicate the types of struggles that she deals with relating to like weight, her weight and how people see her and how she sees herself. And I haven't seen anyone say any negative criticism about her song, which was released at the exact same time of Taylor. Now, the biggest caveat is Tove not as big of a giant pop star as Taylor Swift. So the second you're more famous, you're inviting way more criticism. Obviously, that's impossible to control for that. But I will just say that it's interesting that two female artists at the same time came out with a song. Tove more specifically about it. But even in her music video, she's dancing around like with not much clothing and showing off. Some might argue you notice how beautiful she is, yet she's singing about this song about how she's not good enough and she counts her calories. So some people might feel hurt by that as well, but I still think Tove the way she went about it and her lyrics was more thoughtful and careful with how she articulated the struggle instead of just being like, I'm fat.
So I think that I totally hear you. And it sounds like that work of art spoke to you in a way that, a snippet from a Taylor Swift video didn't. And that's fine for you. But I'm not comfortable policing how women in their music are expressing this issue. You know what I mean? And which I think is kind of what is happening here.
And I want to be clear too. I'm kind of indifferent to Taylor's ultimate decision.
So we should say what her decision was. So they went back, they edited this music video out.
Yeah.
This scene does not exist.
What does the edit look like? Like, how did they edit it?
I think they just took out the scale.
They just took
saying
out the scale.
Fat. I think there's still the scene of her stepping on the scale.
But it's the same music video. They just edited it. So they spoke to someone at YouTube to.
So on Apple Music and YouTube, at least, they must have spoken to someone. It's kind of hard to. Well, most people don't have tools to edit videos in a certain way. If you know
someone, you can kind of get it done. But it's like not really.
It's not something that really happens, and because it can be abused, right? But I think it just doesn't show the scale reading fat.
They took out that.
I think they took out the word fat, and I guess there's two ways of looking at that. Taylor Swift took in constructive criticism about why that could be harmful, and decided to make that edit, or there's a bunch of loud, angry people on Twitter taking away the conversation from her music and making it all negative, and people not even watching the video, but just assuming it's fat-phobic, and a bunch of people in a room going, I guess we have to, do something so people aren't angry anymore. And I don't know which one of those things it is.
I think the hardest part is that we never really know which decision ultimately led to her decision to take it down. Like, we don't know if behind the scenes it's because she genuinely felt bad and like that was a misstep, or because she felt like in her management she didn't have a choice but to make sure that people would see that she responded to the criticism and addressed it. So that's kind of why I feel like there's like a pit in my stomach thinking about this, because even though she made the decision, which maybe a lot of people are celebrating, the fact that she had to make a decision at all is really tough because you don't know ultimately why she did it. And that's why these like kind of controversies just pain me on the insides, because I'm like, is she just responding ultimately or in part to not wanting to continue to be berated for that? So she just has no choice.
Yeah. But the video was edited. So I guess that's a win for people who want to... Here's the thing. Like, what I observed is that most people did not agree with the criticism of her. At least from like her fans who are commenting on things too. I guess that's kind of like... That maybe doesn't mean a lot, right? Because your fans will also just sort of defend you no matter what, even if you are in the wrong. And please don't
Yeah.
interpret anything I've said or what we just said as like there aren't valid criticisms of famous people. Like there's definitely a way a constructive criticism can happen, right? But I think what we're pointing out is that a lot of the time there is this game of people who clearly like enjoy trying to accuse people of things, and then this kind of gross game of like a PR machine being like, how are we
How do
supposed
we
to
address
respond
it?
to
What's the
this?
best way to get the best outcome? Yeah, I know. And that just like makes me sick, honestly. That's why I'm like kind of grossed out by this whole situation.
Anyway, this whole conversation was a bit of a bummer. There's one other thing I wanted to say about the album, because it's kind of this, it's become this sort of prevailing narrative around Taylor Swift's music that it's like too much of it is about relationships she's been in. Maybe this is a bit of an old story because I feel like we used to hear this more than we are on this album. But I feel like there's a lot of like almost like this game being played of like, oh, this song must be about like some famous guy she dated in this period. And I don't know if you have like an outside perspective on this, because I feel like it's really obnoxious to me, I think, and kind of does a disservice to the music that so much of like the community discourse around the songs becomes about like this song must be about Joe Jonas she dated, or this song is a John Mayer song. Like,
So, from an outsider perspective, from my understanding of her, which is largely perpetuated by what the media says, so just that is an obvious disclaimer. It's my understanding that a lot of her songs, I don't know if it's disproportionate compared to other artists or not, maybe you can debunk that, are about a man and have been, or like a past relationship. And that's kind of been a theme in her music.
Yep.
So, if that's the case,
I think that's fair to say. She has a lot of songs about relationships and relationships that ended.
right.
That's
So
fair.
it kind of makes sense then that your fan base, if unless you just say who it's about, is gonna go on this kind of witch hunt to figure out who it's about.
Does it make sense though? A lot of artists write songs about relationships or breakup songs.
Yeah, and I feel right. Aren't those people also curious? I'm not saying it's like normal person behavior. I think it's like abnormal to be doing this, to be like searching and trying to figure out who it's about. I think that's fucking weird, just to be clear. But in this society we live in where people do get obsessed over their pop icons and want to know everything about them, I can see why that happens.
I understand, but I also just think it makes for a worse. If you're just selfishly thinking of yourself as the listener of the music, you know, what makes All Too Well a really good song isn't the fact that it's about her brief relationship with Jake Gyllenhaal. That song is good because that song is about someone you went through a relationship with. Do you know what I mean?
No, because I don't know that song.
But I get the song doesn't really matter, right?
Okay.
I didn't have a relationship with Jake Gyllenhaal. I don't know what really
Right.
happened. I didn't experience
But
that.
is it like
But when
relatable? You
if
can apply it to something?
exactly,
Okay.
you're listening to that song because it
Speaks to most
it
people.
speaks to
who've-
some experience, and her these breakup songs she writes, I think, are very universally loved by her fan base. I don't think because they're like into the gossip of who it was about. I think people who are really enjoying the music are actually thinking about how it applies to their own life and that it speaks to them on that sort of level.
So what's your conclusion though? That you'd wish fans didn't do that? Like didn't try and search who it's about in post forums online?
Yeah, I think it's kind of gross. And I get it. It's like, you know, is someone that famous? I think it's just going to happen. And
Yeah.
there's just sort of like, I understand there's something alluring about trying to find those nuggets of information.
Doesn't she also put Easter eggs in a lot of her content, like for other things?
Yeah, but I don't think the Easter eggs are like, here's a hint that this song is about John Mayer.
Right. Just like in general, though, she makes use
Easter
of
eggs
hints
like,
and
here's
stuff.
what's coming next if you like, there's a clue in the background of a photo I took sort of thing. I
Right.
don't think she really participates in this. I want everyone to guess which boyfriend I'm talking about in this.
Yeah, I hear you, and
Yeah.
it sounds like that's not what she does either. But since she kind of is known for putting Easter eggs in her content, which so am I. Like I do the same thing for like holo taco stuff. I mean, whatever. It's not exactly the same. Whatever.
Sure,
I'm
yeah.
not like Taylor Swift level. But like when you do that, people are just naturally curious about your content and trying to solve everything. So it does kind of
It
make
cultivates
sense
a
that
sort of
people
like
are,
detective
Yeah.
style of fan. Yeah, that's a good point, actually. In some ways,
which
she's
is
contributing
great
to this.
in
Yeah.
many communities, to have communities, they can have a chance to engage, to discuss with each other, to find things. It's fun. I know we do the same thing with Holo Taco Detectives, but I guess I just don't really have any other interesting things for people to search on that I haven't spoken
People
about.
are
So I don't
speculating
really have
about
this
your
problem.
ex-boyfriend.
Yeah, like that's nowhere to be found. But like, I can kind of see though that if your community has already been invited to look for clues, they might step too far in the direction that they weren't invited in, and it's not permission to go there, but they just do.
Yeah.
It's not cool. I think it's weird, but I don't know. Like, I don't want to say that. I don't want people to misinterpret that like she gave permission for them to do that. She did not. I think there should be boundaries, and that should be a clear one. But people are fucking weird. People behave in strange ways.
People are weird.
People are weird and
In
inappropriate.
conclusion-
People are inappropriate all the time. Yeah.
All right. Do you want to talk about stay-at-home girlfriends?
Sure.
I have no segue for this, but there was this meme going around. What was this, last week? Sort of viral tweet, right? Or a viral TikTok.
TikTok, yeah. Your fave.
Of this woman. I think she had labeled it herself or used a hashtag about like stay-at-home girlfriend, where it's like, here's what I do in a day. And it's like, I wake up and I have some celery juice and I drive my boyfriend to the gym and then I journal for a while and I read emails and then I did a little bit of laundry. Then I had lunch and then I drank some wine and then I hung out with Luke and we went for a walk and I did some Pilates. And it's like, that was my day as a stay-at-home girlfriend. And this really, people really responded to this. And I think like one of two ways, right? There was a lot of, like, I can't believe she's not doing something productive. There was like a lot of sort of like criticism around that.
Or her independence. Like she has
Or
her
yeah,
independence,
like and then there was like this other sort of group of reactions just about like, I don't know, like that looks great. I would love to just stay at home and drink celery juice and do whatever I want, right? But like this really caught the internet on fire in an interesting way, as much as things can go viral these days.
It
which
went
is like,
viral to like mainstream media. There was like American talk shows that were talking about it that I only saw through like streamers watching them, because I don't watch American talk shows. We don't get those here, generally speaking.
it went viral on The View.
Yeah, or I think so. Or another one. I don't know. Was it Good Morning America? I can't remember.
Sure.
But yeah, a lot of people were talking about it. And I just think it's so fascinating because it's basically like a recycled reincarnation of the same kinds of responses that we had to more traditional understandings of what a woman does with her life. Like, for example, 20 years ago, there could have been a movie about a woman like making the decision either, or maybe it's two women, one who wanted the more traditional life of like marrying someone, having his kids and staying home and not working, versus the woman who's like, you know what, I want to be a career woman and I'm not going to make my life about my man, and I can be in a partnership, but I'm going to make sure that I have my independence. And if they choose to have kids, like, sure, that could have existed either way.
This was a trope in a lot of popular media not long ago.
Right. But it was about like married and,
Kids.
and married with kids or not. And this is the young TikTok version recycling of that, where it's the stay-at-home girlfriend, not the stay-at-home wife or the stay-at-home mom. It's a stay-at-home girlfriend. So it's basically the same argument that's being illuminated again, but for young people in 2022, which I think is really interesting because you're seeing the exact same polarization of opinions, like you just explained.
And it kind of, more and more people aren't getting married, and more people aren't choosing to have children. So it kind of makes sense that there's this bucket of people that like still embrace that sort of like traditional wife role and desiring that in a couple, but without the marriage and without the children.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, isn't that
I think that's kind of what's happening here.
That's exactly what's happening. But I think the different response to this one than you would have gotten 20 years ago with that parallel is the question like, well, what are you doing if you're not raising kids, which is unpaid labor? You know, you can be extremely busy raising children.
Yeah.
But if you're just making him celery juice and driving him to the gym when he could have done those two things himself, it's very confusing to people. What are you doing, or where are you going with this?
Yeah. So I think a lot of the reaction to this is really just, it's a mirror, right? A lot of people are projecting their own sort of feelings
Oh, yeah.
about it. So it's maybe if you hate your job, the idea of being on what looks like a constant vacation and staying home and just making breakfast for your boyfriend sounds
Like a dream.
like a dream,
Yeah.
right? And then I think a lot of people see that, and I think a lot of people felt like a lot of sadness for the woman in this video, because I think people who do have like fulfilling jobs or feel like they have a lot of purpose in life, whatever that means to you or them, kind of saw like a lack of a meaningful day-to-day routine for this person
Or purpose.
or purpose even.
It was also the tone of voice, though. The tone of voice, at least one of the viral TikToks used, the woman sounded kind of sad and like
Yeah.
apathetic, like, and then I do this, and then I do that. It sounded like it was sad. So that's also where people are reading that from.
Yeah, I do find, so I err more, I think you can live your life however you want, first of all.
Yeah, we'll get to that next. But what is your personal opinion for you?
Yeah, but I leaned more towards that sort of ladder, that I felt kind of sad for what I was seeing. And I think that mostly comes from like, I know I'm kind of like the vacation guy who wants to take a vacation. And I think you work a little bit too much, and I would rather we spend a little less time in our life working, blah, blah, blah. I don't want to recycle that conversation. But even to me, the idea of living a constant life of never feeling like challenge or feeling like you would need to be productive. And it's not about like a job or making money or something like that. It's about having something that you do with your days that is a little challenging or stimulating or creativity. And that doesn't have to be a job, but like the idea of being on a vacation 365 days a year sounds like a nightmare. Like if you were trapped in a resort and you could say like, oh my, I could just go to the pool every day or lie on the beach and, have a cocktail. But like that would come after a few weeks, and maybe this threshold's different for different people. I think that would turn into a prison, right? I think a lot of people crave and want to feel that they are doing something productive, even if that is something as simple as, writing or growing a garden or something else.
So I think people would argue that she is being productive if she wants to just fulfill the needs of her boyfriend. I think people would say, well, like, she is doing stuff. She's taking care of him. And that's the purpose she wants. So I think the real issue for me as a woman seeing this, in my personal opinion, that does not apply to everyone, but when I look at something like that, it makes me feel sad, because I personally don't want my own life to be centered around doing things for my partner. Now, that doesn't mean doing things for your partner isn't a great thing as well. That's not what I'm saying. I just mean if your main purpose and the primary thing you do all day, for me personally, I would not feel satisfied. I need some independence, not just financially, which I also think is important, because if I fear and have seen in people I've known in my life that you can definitely be taken advantage of if you do not have that option to leave or have a bit of independence from your own funds. But I also understand the challenges around that if you're the one raising children. So that's not a blanket statement. But I just, as a woman, feel a little worried, a little scared, a little apprehensive about seeing another woman in that position where she's basically allowing a life where she doesn't have a backup plan. Now, I will never tell her that she's wrong or stupid or pathetic or the other really hurtful comments that I've seen people say on her feed.
That's gross.
But in the background, I'm a bit worried and concerned because I've seen situations like that are ripe for abuse. That doesn't mean that it always happens. Some men are great and would never do that to their partner and take advantage of their financial status over her. But it's a little bit sad, not just for that reason, but also like because I, as a person, want to feel like I can fulfill things in my own life and then also fulfill things with my partner, like in a co-op or whatever. And that's what makes me sad. But there are women who don't feel like that and want their main purpose and feel better if their main purpose is centered around making their man happy, basically. So I'm not going to tell those women they're wrong. I think there's something for everyone. And I think that's kind of the key thing here is like having a respectful conversation. Look at this. You can always have a respectful take and still express your personal opinion and where you're coming from and why.
Am I a stay-at-home boyfriend? You know, I'm at home. I bring you tea.
That's why I don't judge, because my boyfriend is the stay-at-home boyfriend.
I feel this has all felt very heavy, but I feel like we should be able to talk about these things with a bit of levity too, right?
That's all you do, right? You just bring me tea.
That's all I do.
All he does, brings me tea, drives me to my doctor's appointments.
I'm thinking to how people are gonna react to all of this, and especially that what we talked about with Taylor Swift and things like that. I know there are gonna be people who do not, as reasonable as we could be, or as much empathy as we can express in talking about these topics.
It's not enough.
There will just be people who just like give you the opposite of the benefit of the doubt. Yeah. They will give the worst possible interpretation. I know there are going to be people who listen to this, who leave a comment that just implies we were shaming fat people or don't respect fat people or something like that. Mm-hmm. That comment's going to exist somewhere on the internet, and someone else might read that and not have even heard our conversation, and that might just sort of like reaffirm or reinforce this idea or spread this, I think, false idea, right? And that's sort of the risk of talking about these topics at all.
Yeah, and I've talked about that before in a podcast a while back, where I think the most harmful thing for me as a influencer or famous person, whatever, isn't that there's negative comments that are just like, you're ugly or you're fat, for example. It's not those comments, or you have yellow nails, you're dumb, or whatever. It's comments that don't really... I feel like they misinterpret what I'm saying, or they kind of twist it and just they write me an essay and they say, I'm so disappointed in you. And then other people who haven't listened to us or have made up their own minds yet read that comment and just decide to agree. Because it's really easy as humans to see a negative criticism and be like, oh yeah, you're right, you have a point. And I'm just like, it's easier for my brain to just like go along with that than to take the time to listen and consider before deciding. Now, I'm not accusing everyone of like not listening or taking the time. I just think generally speaking, there are people who just do that. And that has been really hard for me to kind of accept when I see those kinds of comments that I do find quite dismissive. And it's just really sad, personally, when I see people write some kind of essay that I feel like misunderstood me, and then they just write like they're disappointed. Those are way worse comments to me than someone just saying your nails are ugly.
Yeah. Or if a comment has yikes in it, that's usually a sign of something.
Yeah, it's not a good sign.
Usually something unreasonable is going to follow that. Yikes, didn't think you would argue that fat people are bad or something like that, right?
Yeah, even though we didn't say that. So, yeah, we're basically just prepared because we know this always happens. No matter what the topic, if it's something where there's even just the tiniest minority of people who you know are going to disagree with you, they will be the most vocal group of people. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, man. I just like one day in 20 years, 10 years.
Not going to be on the
internet.
One
day I'm not going to be on the internet, and I just won't have to deal with it. And let me just be really clear. It's not that I can't deal with people disagreeing with me.
Or giving some constructive criticism.
There are people who can respectfully disagree, just in the way that I've hopefully respectfully put everything I said today. I am okay with people respectfully explaining something. But what I think is really not helpful to any of this conversation is when the type of comment is like, yikes, I'm disappointed in you. You whatever, and then like go. I don't want to put ideas into people's heads.
And it's kind of the way like social media has, I think, trained people to have these types of conversations.
Yeah.
Because no one is going to come up to me on the street and say, Ben, I don't think you're fat enough to have an opinion on Taylor Swift's music video, right?
Not the
but
thing guy.
That is the kind of comment I will see on this video.
I'm pretty sure you already saw it. Someone already had
said
written
that.
like,
yeah.
Not the thin man saying something isn't fat-phobic.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's what it was. Yeah. So there will be those kinds of comments, and my problem isn't just that they occur, it's that other people read them and are just more eager, because our brains are like this, to find the negativity and be like, yeah, and celebrate it. Anyways, this is my issue with the internet. It's pretty existential and ongoing.
Yeah.
And there is no solution, Ben. We just like...
delete your account.
Basically, well, no, okay. I'm not going to delete mine. Because there's so much good on the internet, too.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I
don't want us to be all self-pitying
I feel like,
about this
I love this community so much, and I hope that people who have been listening to us or watching me for 7 years know that I'm never trying to come from a place where I want to hurt people. Mm-hmm. I will go out of my way sometimes to make sure that I'm not saying something that is hurtful. And it's hard because I'm always second guessing myself. And I feel like sometimes I speak really poorly when I'm constantly afraid of like, how do I put this in the best way? And it's not that I'm thinking it the wrong way. It's just that I'm like so fucking hyper vigilant and scared of using the wrong word. So I kind of feel like I'm reflecting on this podcast already, that like I said things that weren't that clear, or I was like too slow in my words. And it's because I'm constantly terrified of hurting people or saying something wrong. And I probably still said something wrong. But this is just human behavior. And you try talking to the internet about something. Like maybe that's... Well, you go on the internet and talk.
I generally err on the side of not trying to hold myself to that standard.
Because it's impossible.
But then I will look back and sometimes be like, I put that really poorly. Or I think I didn't make a very good point there.
Yeah.
And that's I'm okay with myself. I can live with myself knowing that I'm not going to be perfect in that way. But it is going to lead to more people leaving comments that start with yikes.
Just ban the word yikes. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, every comment with a yikes is deleted.
Some people will ask, why did we have this conversation at all then if we didn't want to hear that people say yikes or disappointed? And I just want to be clear. I don't think the solution, which was kind of my solution for the first few years of my existence on the internet, is to just never say anything about things that are the slightest bit controversial. I understand why a lot of people who are essentially brands, even just as a YouTuber when I was just simply Nailogical before Holo Taco, I was still a brand. And because I didn't have a podcast or a stream, I was at very low risk for saying anything or putting anything out there that was the least bit offensive, because my content was so cut down and monitored and regulated, and there just wasn't much of it. So the second you enter the stream verse or podcast verse, you're going to just say more human things. And I really don't like this idea of like, well, don't say anything then, because I feel like that's not helpful. I feel like we started this podcast and I started streaming so I could just talk more like a real person. Yeah. So that's kind of my take on it. Just have conversation. Also, you love Taylor Swift, so you just wanted to talk about
Taylor Swift.
Is there something else she's expected to drop? Does she have like a bonus album or something?
Bonus album. Everyone's speculating she's going to re-release another one she's going to re-record another one of her old albums soon.
Okay. So it sounds exactly the same. Or no?
Well, yeah, she basically wants to own the track. You kind of get this, right? Yeah. But the news everyone's waiting for is the tour, because she hasn't toured since 2018.
Since before COVID. Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
Is she coming to Ottawa?
Nope.
Where's
Except
she going?
like if we
Do
invite
you know where
her,
she's going?
If we invite her over for dinner, maybe she'd come.
She'd, totally show up.
Yeah.
But like, do you know where she's going? Like, will it be
in Canada? It'll probably only be Toronto.
Oh, we could go to Toronto.
Could go to Toronto. Could go a lot of places.
Vacation Ben. Well, you're not allowed because you're a stay-at-home boyfriend.
Taylor Swift themed vacation. All right.
You should make a TikTok that's stay-at-home boyfriend just to parody it.
You will never see me on TikTok.
Okay, Ben, that would be so funny though. I could see it now. And then
I give girlfriend my tea because
And I
she's
steep
too
the
good to
tea.
make her own tea. So I gotta bring it to her
Every morning.
Oh, she said it was the wrong temperature, so I gotta take it back and heat it up again.
We ran out of oat milk, so I ran to the
To the store and got some oat milk. And then I brushed the cat for 30 minutes.
I'm allergic to the cat.
Do you see how funny this is? Please, Ben, please film TikToks with me.
No.
Okay. Guys, I tried. I tried so hard. All right. Okay.
Thanks so much for watching.
Holo Taco Glitters restock tomorrow. Don't forget.
Plug in here.
Look, this is my favorite. It's Plum Luck. Mention you like it. She likes it.
Wushu.
Midnight Spark will also be back.
Will it?
Well, we're making more for the
That's
restock.
the purple polish, right?
Yes, it's the indigo purple. So
Or it's blue.
No.
And the
But I say that because Midnight's because Taylor Swift.
Oh.
Anyways, so if you're a Swiftie, Midnight Spark, maybe you'll like that color. Okay.
Yeah, maybe.
All right, everyone. Thank you so much for watching, and thank you for listening to this entire thing, and being respectful, just in general as a human.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I hope I want to do on this earth: is still have conversations, but be respectful. Why are you feeding the cat water?
I thought she might be thirsty.
Okay, she can't sip. All right, everyone. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you have a happy Taco Tuesday. We'll see y'all later. Bye. Bye.